If you've ever wondered if you're reading the right way, guess what? You most likely are. Mostly the advice on how to read is selling an image, a mirage of what reading looks like. But you are ultimately the best judge for what works for you. Sometimes we may just need a little help and space to figure that out. Today, I would like to wade into two reading issues that are popular on YouTube. The first one is, how can you read well? And the second is how the key concepts from Death of the Author are often misread on YouTube, and how a good reading can actually provide you with more freedom for your reading. First, let's get into the channel and reading update. And just real quick, if you would like to support this channel, please hit like and subscribe. Thank you very much. First of all, I received a great response for my last video, and I just wanted to say thank you. This channel is a passion project of mine, and it means a lot to share these books with you, an audience who cares. I also received some wonderful recommendations from viewers, and I'll spell this because I'm not sure how to pronounce this. LE9HN. She gave me an entire list of authors, and I've already ordered several of their books. So soon I'll be reading Willard Motley, Stephen Barnes, Barbara Chase Rabaud, Albert French, Samuel Delany, and Frank Yerby. So probably Willard Motley's Knock on Any Door will be my first pick when the order comes in. He appeals to me because of my Chicago roots. And by the way, go Bears. I have been rereading Helm by Sarah Hall. Last time I read it a little too quickly, and I didn't get quite what I wanted out of it. So the book is about a main character who is an ancient wind named Helm. That in and of itself should be enough to recommend it. My main read right now is Obscene Bird of Night by José Donoso. I've not finished it yet, and even though I am over halfway through it, I really can't tell you exactly what it's about. It's one of those books. It's unlike most novels I've read. One critic called the narrative style refractive and prismatic, which I like. I like that description a lot, because it does the narrative justice. So refractive and prismatic means the primary subjects and objects of the story are often distorted and amplified through the narrative's perspective. So they're often exaggerated, for example. And the narrative, it goes in and out of time, goes in and out of characters, in and out of different mental states, and even reality. So the narrative can be difficult to track, but there is a through line. Donoso's narrative is an extreme of stream of consciousness. The closest comparison that I have to it is Quentin Compson in The Death Throes in Sound and Fury, and or when Leopold Bloom watches the fireworks in Ulysses. The main question that you would rightly ask me about this book, based on the description, do you actually like it? Yes, I like this book very, very much. It has an emphasis on distortion, depravity, and decline, 3Ds, that makes it an intellectually challenging book. And it can be, at times, a little gross, a little depraved. Just a warning to people who may want to pick it up. However, I like it quite a bit because I tend to like weird books. I'm also reading The Maniac by Benjamín Labatut. I really just got started on this. And as you can see, I like to juggle several books at a time. The Maniac is a historical triptych masquerading as a biography, which is also secretly experimental fiction about the evolution of 20th century American science, from the atomic era all the way up to AI. The main subject of the novel is a real life person and I believe the name is pronounced Jan von Neumann. I recently finished 2 books. The first one, I finished this one. It's Speak by Louisa Hall. And I also picked up Automatic Noodle by Annalee Newitz. I know, quite a variety here. So the first novel that I showed you, Speak, has multiple narratives woven together across history. And it's a book that's about communication gaps. This channel's particular interest is AI, and one of the communication gaps is between a little girl and AI. Relevant to this book, I recently scanned a title called If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies. I know, dramatic. This book talks about the concept of alignment. When they talk about alignment according to AI, alignment refers to the gap between the user's intent and what the AI actually does. The gap right now, and probably for a long time, and certainly in Speak, is pretty large. So Speak dramatizes this disconnect, this misalignment. In one narrative thread, a young girl's isolation and conversation with an AI deepens a reality distortion, and it deepens her loneliness. Both are conditions that she's actually trying to get away from. The other book, Automatic Noodle, is officially marketed as a cozy sci-fi, but that does it justice and doesn't do it justice. This book is set after a future second US Civil War, and California has broken away, and robots are reactivated through an emergency protocol. When these robots, I believe there are 4 of them, when they wake up, they find out that they may be repossessed and their restaurant may be sold off. Also, their neighborhood is struggling and they have to figure out how to survive. They use noodles to feed the neighborhood and bring it back to life. They give the people sustenance and also the culture and the spirit of the neighborhood. That's one of the reasons that it's a cozy sci-fi. But it's also about something sneaky. It's also about information and disinformation warfare, which is not at all what I expected, but actually in a good way. I looked up Annalee Newitz's other books, and it seems as though she's actually written some scholarship about information warfare. I've read another of her books, and it was equally excellent and very detailed as well. So, recommend. All of this has reminded me of something that I've taught for decades. Reading is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not even that for the same person. These books reminded me that how we read actually matters, and how we have freedom to read and think of our reading matters as well. So, for example, I started Automatic Noodle expecting something light, but it had way more to teach than I expected. With Donoso, I knew I needed to read slowly and with attention. Then with Speak, I expected to take tons of notes, but I actually found out that I needed to maybe read a little bit more slowly and allow the book to wash over me. I needed to let it steep and process rather than getting in and dissecting it. Here's the part that no one tells you. Your purpose for reading changes everything. There are no best rules for reading, especially best rules of reading that apply to everyone in every situation. And I've seen a number of videos online that have suggested that. Before you start a book, just a couple of things that you can do to make your experience better. Ask yourself, why am I reading this? Even if the answer is simply for fun, have at it. There is no universal correct way to read, which is why those videos promising the way to read are often bogus. As long as you are reading, you are learning. And here's a secret: narrative is a natural medium for learning. If you want more of a challenge and you want to study a text, then yes, you will want more rigor in your process. And you can do things like active reading practices. For more on narrative learning, check out a couple of books. So the books are Narrative Learning by Ivor Goodson et al. And others, and Narrative and Metaphor in Education by Hanne and Kaal. I'll post these sources in the description should you choose to go and look for them. You can decide your approach and your benefit from the novel rather than, again, relying on some arbitrary best rules for reading. The second important issue on how to read, and in particular, give yourself freedom to read. I've seen a lot on the internet that mention this idea of death of the author as a reading method. Here's what it actually means. It refers to two articles written by one Roland Barthes, and the second article is by Michel Foucault. Both of them mention death of the author. And death of the author is not a law. It's not saying we must sever art from the artist. It's actually more nuanced, but too often nuance is simplified and flattened online into an either-or choice, which it's not. Instead, just like reading for purpose, a text will not have a single simple answer, which I think is incredibly liberating for how you might approach a book. In 1967, Roland Barthes wrote an article that is very much part of the era's intellectual and political response to authoritarian and traditionalist thinking. He wanted reading to step away from traditional criticism where the author was the ultimate authority of the text, and he wanted to free the reader to make their own interpretations of a book. He noted several reasons for this. One, author intention is slippery to impossible to interpret, because authors, even if they tell us their intent, are not the only arbiters of meaning. They are notoriously unreliable interpreters of their own work. And once a text hits a culture, it takes on a life of its own, and it becomes part of the fabric of life. For example, millions of young people learned to celebrate difference through Harry Potter. Rowling did not. But celebration of underdogs is definitely part of the books, right? In this instance, should the books be subsumed under a philosophy that celebrates exclusion? I think most of us would probably say no. Now, whether or not you want to enrich a living author, that's another important choice for another video. Bart's next reason for freeing readers: it empowers readers to be creators of meaning. Rather than limiting and closing a text to a single interpretation, the author. If you read a book, you know this to be true. When the angle of vision changes, we see different parts of an object. The same is true for a story. When we look from different angles, we'll see different parts of that story. Now, a quick note. This reading can often be taken to an extreme, and I think this is where we can pull back a little bit from some of the readings that I see online. This idea of death of the author does not mean that every interpretation is equally valid or correct. Many readings can be valid, Some readings, by virtue of their skill, context, and reasoning, may actually be more plausible than others, but it's not a hierarchy. The argument in Death of the Author is not to devolve into complete relativism. Whatever the case, we are still bound to a text. Now, the author of the other separate The Death of the Author text is someone called Michel Foucault. I love saying that name. He wrote it on a similar subject, but Foucault, he took a different angle on it. Foucault was more concerned with the author's social function. That is, when we look at an author, how does that concept of the author function socially? Or how does the concept of the author, how is it a site of shifting power for prioritizing some interpretations over others? He noted that, for example, in some interpretations, the author's identity dominates the reading. And he also saw that in others, the author becomes irrelevant. We don't really read some of the author's identity in it. And it's this question that he was looking at. So here's a simple example. Let's suppose this. If an author is a woman, how often are interpretations restricted to her femininity versus a male counterpart who may actually have more free reign over many more sites of interpretation? And therefore, the interpretations are more flexible with male authors. Again, these are kinds of questions that Foucault was looking at. Why does this still matter? Well, we don't try to psychoanalyze an author's mind to interpret meaning of a book, but we can historicize it, we can contextualize it, and we can interpret perhaps the cultural forces shaping a text. And for everyday reading, it simply means that authors aren't reliable interpreters of the work. The author is a social construct that changes over time, including with gender, identity, and cultural context. Readers can actually craft meaning, and this can be incredibly freeing. And reading is open to a plural or a plurality of perspectives. But again, let's remember, many readings are possible, but not every interpretation is equally plausible. Okay, so Death of the Author does not mean the following things. It does not mean that meaning is all relative. It does not mean that meaning is unbound from a text or a book. It doesn't mean that all interpretations are necessarily valid, although there can be many, many different valid interpretations. It also doesn't mean that art is infallible, and in fact, that may be a freeing fact. My hope is that all of this helps you feel more confident in your reading life, not anyone else's version of it. If this gave you something to think about, I love to hear what you're reading or how your purpose changed your experience of a book. Drop a comment, drop a like, a thumbs up, and I'd love to learn from you. Thank you very much. This has been Tilting at